The morning your life ends, the sky is completely ordinary. You are 7 years old, and the only thing you care about is the wooden hoop rolling across the dirt road ahead of you, wobbling slightly to the left because the edge got dented last summer and your father said he would fix it, and never did. You chase it anyway. You always chase it. The village smells like bread and animal dung and the particular sweetness of cut grass drying in the heat. And somewhere behind you, your mother is calling your name in the tone that means come inside, not the tone that means danger, so you don't turn around yet. You don't turn around. That is the thing you will think about, years later, in the long, quiet hours when memory becomes its own kind of punishment. You didn't turn around. The first sound is distant, a low rhythmic thudding that your child's mind translates into a festival drum, a merchant's cart, something ordinary. Then the shouting starts, and it is nothing like festival shouting. It has a different shape entirely. It rises too fast and cuts off too clean, and underneath it runs a sound you have never heard before but understand immediately, the way you understand heat before you touch fire. You stop. The hoop rolls on without you and falls. When you finally turn, the village is already different. Figures are moving between the houses, tall and armored, catching the sunlight in ways the village men never do. Your mother is no longer in the doorway. The doorway is empty. You call her name and hear nothing back, and for a moment the world simply refuses to make sense. Your mind keeps trying to fit what you see into something familiar, keeps insisting there is an explanation, keeps waiting for the moment when everything resolves back into an ordinary morning. That moment does not come. It will never come again. Someone grabs your arm before you reach the doorway, not roughly exactly, but with the complete indifference of a man moving an object from one place to another. You are lifted, repositioned, held. The soldier doesn't look at you. He looks past you, scanning the road, already thinking about something else while his hand keeps you locked in place with a grip that makes your bones feel like kindling. You see your neighbor Marcus fall near the well. You see two women being herded toward the center of the village, their arms crossed over their chests, their faces wearing expressions you don't have words for yet. You see an old man sitting in the dirt outside his doorway, perfectly still, watching everything with the calm of someone who has seen this before and always knew it would come again. You do not see your mother, you do not see your father. You call for them twice. The soldier's grip tightens once in warning, not in cruelty, the way you might tighten your hand around a dog's collar when it pulls toward the road. The message is clear even without language. You understand it. You stop calling. That is your first lesson in what you are now. They move you to the village center with the others. Perhaps 30 people, a mix of ages, some crying, some silent. One young man with blood on his temple who keeps touching it with 2 fingers and then looking at his hand as though the blood belongs to someone else. The soldiers work efficiently, without anger, without conversation, the way craftsmen work when the task is familiar and the day is long. Your village has become a job. You and the others are the inventory. It takes less than an hour. You will later understand that this is actually how long it takes. 1 hour to end a world that took generations to build. The soldiers know their work. They have done it in 100 villages before yours, and they will do it in 100 more, and each time the arithmetic is the same. Some people run. Some people fight. Neither group tends to fare well. The ones who survive the first hour are the ones who go still, who make themselves small, who let the situation settle around them like sediment in disturbed water. You go still. You make yourself small. You survive the first hour. It is while they are organizing the group for the march that you see her. A girl your age, someone's daughter from the far end of the village, a girl you knew only slightly. She had a red scarf she wore in all weathers, and you envied it without ever having spoken to her about it. She is on the ground near the grain store, not moving, one arm extended. A soldier steps around her without looking down. One of her shoes has come off. You remember noticing that. Not the blood. Not the position of her arm, not the stillness that means something final and irreversible, the shoe. It lies a few feet away in the dirt, turned on its side exactly as if she had simply stepped out of it and would be back for it in a moment, as if she had just run inside quickly and left it there, and the whole terrible scene around it was some misunderstanding that would soon be corrected. Years later, when entire stretches of your childhood have faded beyond recall, your mother's face gone soft at the edges, your father's voice reduced to a tone without words, the exact color of your front door lost completely. You will still remember that shoe, the precise angle of it, the worn stitching along the toe, the way the morning light caught the leather. Memory keeps strange things. It loses the faces you beg it to hold and preserves the details you never asked for, And there is nothing to be done about that. There is nothing to be done about most things, as it turns out. This is also something you will learn. They form you into a column before midday. You look back once as the village disappears behind the first hill. The smoke is already rising. Not the dark, urgent smoke of catastrophe, but the thin, patient smoke of things being systematically burned, tidied away, erased. The kind of smoke that means no one is coming back. You face forward. You walk. The road to Rome takes 3 weeks, and by the end of the first, you have already forgotten what it felt like to choose your own direction. The column moves at the soldier's pace, which is neither cruel nor kind. It is simply efficient. The pace of men who have calculated exactly how fast a group of captives can walk before the weaker ones begin to fail, and have set their speed just above that line. You walk until your legs stop feeling like legs and become instead 2 separate problems you are managing. And then you walk more. The landscape changes around you as Roman territory deepens, the hills growing gentler, the roads better paved, the farms larger and more orderly, everything carrying the particular confidence of a civilization that has had a very long time to arrange the world to its liking. You sleep beside roads, your back against strangers, the cold coming up through the ground no matter what position you find. You wake before sunrise because the soldiers wake before sunrise. You eat what is given, when it is given. You stop asking questions after the 3rd day because questions produce nothing, not answers, not acknowledgement, not even annoyance. They simply disappear into the air like smoke, unheard, irrelevant, the sounds of an animal that hasn't yet learned its situation. There is a woman in the column named Briseis, who is perhaps 30, perhaps older, with the steady, watchful eyes of someone cataloging everything. She begins walking near you on the 5th day without explanation, and on the 7th day she says, quietly and without looking at you, that crying at night keeps the others awake and solves nothing. You want to tell her you know that. You want to tell her many things. Instead, you say nothing. She nods once, as though you've agreed to something. In a way, you have. She teaches you small things over the following days. Not lessons exactly, more like observations delivered sideways while the column moves. Don't make eye contact with the soldiers, but don't avoid it so deliberately that it becomes obvious. Eat everything given regardless of taste because you don't know when the next meal arrives. If you feel sick, don't show it. If you feel afraid, don't show it. If you feel anything at all, build a room for it somewhere inside yourself, somewhere private, and put it there and close the door and leave it until you are alone enough to open it safely. You are 7 years old, and you are receiving your education. Rome appears on a morning when the light is doing something extraordinary across the hills, gold and pink in a way that seems designed to be beautiful. And for a moment the sight of it stops even the grief in your chest, because it is simply too large for a child who has never left her village to process all at once. Briseis watches your face. Don't let it impress you, she says quietly. You try not to. You fail. The marketplace is in a district near the forum, and the smell reaches you before the sight does. Bodies and oil and something metallic underneath, the smell of transaction, of human beings converted into units of exchange. You are cleaned before the placement, not kindly, but thoroughly, your hair combed with an efficiency that leaves your scalp burning, your face inspected the way a merchant inspects fruit, turned toward the light, assessed. The platform is lower than you imagined. Just 3 wooden steps up from the street. The crowd below is ordinary in a way that disturbs you more than cruelty would have. Men in togas discussing arrangements, people going about their morning as though the things happening on this platform are as unremarkable as the weather, which to them they are. A man in his 50s selects you before midday. He doesn't look at your face when he reviews the records. He looks at the ledger. You are recorded. And Rome, enormous and indifferent and completely unconcerned with the interior life of one small girl from a village it has already forgotten, continues exactly as before. The merchant's name is Gaius Aurelius Macro, and his house is the largest enclosed space you have ever stood inside. You are shown where you will sleep, a narrow room off the kitchen, shared with 3 others, and where you will not go, which is most of the house, and what your work will be, which is whatever is required. The first months are a particular kind of hard that has nothing to do with physical pain. The language is the problem. Latin surrounds you like water, and you move through it deaf and mute, catching shapes without meanings, rhythms without words. You learn to watch before you act. You learn to copy. You learn to shrink yourself into the background of each room and observe until the patterns emerge. It takes 4 months before you understand full sentences. 6 before you can respond without searching for words. 8 before someone in the household stops visibly adjusting their speech when they speak to you. In your 9th month, a girl named Livia calls you by your name correctly for the first time, not the Latin approximation the household has assigned you, but your actual name, the one from your village, which you told her once in a whispered conversation over kitchen scraps and assumed she hadn't retained. She retained it. You look at her. She shrugs with the particular economy of someone who considers remembering people's names the minimum standard of basic decency. "It's your name," she says simply. "Why would I call you something else?" It is not a question, it is a position. Livia has been in the household for 4 years. She knows the house the way a sailor knows a ship, not just its geography but its moods, its patterns, which rooms carry sound and which swallow it, which rules are enforced and which are theater. She teaches you all of it, not out of sentimentality, out of pragmatism. What you actually know, in the private room inside yourself where you keep true things, is that she looked at a frightened child who didn't speak the language and decided, without announcement or fanfare, to make sure she survived. She chose you. In a life where almost nothing is chosen, this means everything. The work is relentless in the way that all domestic work is relentless, not because any single task is impossible, but because the tasks never end. You carry water, you clean floors, you assist in the kitchen, in the laundry, in the endless cycle of preparing and clearing and preparing again. Your hands crack in winter, your back aches by evening. But within the relentlessness there is also, gradually, something else. Structure, predictability. The particular comfort of knowing what each day holds, which is not the same as happiness, but is at least the opposite of chaos. You do not call it safety, you are not confused about what you are. You are 8 years old, then 9, then 10. You meet Demetrius on an afternoon in your 3rd year. He is perhaps 60, thin in the way of men who forget to eat because thinking absorbs them entirely, with ink-stained fingers and the slightly unfocused gaze of someone whose mind is perpetually working on a problem the visible world has no access to. He nearly walks into you in the corridor. "How old are you?" he says, not unkindly, simply directly. 11, you say. "Can you read?" "No." "Unfortunate," he says. Then he goes back inside and closes the door. 3 days later, Macro summons you to the office. Demetrius is standing to one side. "You'll assist Demetrius in the mornings," Macro says, "managing the correspondence." "I can't read," you say carefully. "You'll learn," Demetrius says from the corner, as though this is a minor logistical detail already resolved. It begins with letters, then words, then sentences. Demetrius teaches the way he does everything, directly, efficiently, without false encouragement, but also without cruelty. He corrects errors immediately and moves forward. Within 3 months, you are reading simple texts. Within 6, you are reading correspondence. Within a year, you are organizing Macro's letters, categorizing, cross-referencing, flagging the ones requiring immediate response. He begins teaching you numbers, then accounts, then the particular grammar of commercial correspondence. You absorb it all with a hunger that surprises even you, not because you have chosen ambition, because knowledge is the one thing in this household that cannot be taken back once given. What lives inside your mind belongs to you in a way that nothing else in your life does. Your position in the household shifts gradually. You are no longer simply carrying water and cleaning floors. You are managing the morning correspondence, cross-checking supply orders against delivery records, flagging discrepancies that the previous system would have missed entirely. Other servants notice. Some are neutral about it, some are not. There is a man named Castor who has managed the household supply records for years. Your presence makes certain errors visible, which makes him regard you with the particular hostility of someone who has confused the exposure of their dishonesty with a personal attack. Livia warns you on a quiet evening in the kitchen that Castor has been speaking to the household steward about your attitude, your ambition, your forgetting of your place. You listen, you adjust, not by retreating, but by becoming more careful, more precise, more visibly useful to Macro in ways that make undermining you increasingly costly. Demetrius observes this without commenting directly. Once, and only once, he says, "You learn the right things." Coming from him, this is considerable. Livia is sold on a Wednesday in your 15th year, and you are not told in advance. You find out the way you find out most things in this household that concern you directly, not through communication, not through consideration, but through the simple fact of absence. She is there at breakfast. She is not there at midday. Her few possessions are gone. The comb is still there. She left in a hurry or she was given no time, which means the same thing. You ask the kitchen steward. He tells you, with the practiced neutrality of a man who has delivered this kind of information many times, that she has been placed with a household in the Aventine district. A good household, he adds, as though the quality of the arrangement changes what the arrangement is. You nod. You return to the correspondence room. You sit down at the desk and you pick up the first letter and you read it and you process it and you file it. And you do this for the entire morning with the mechanical precision of someone who has learned that the work does not pause for grief and that grief does not pause for the work. The private room inside yourself where you keep true things. You open it just long enough to put this inside. Livia's dry humor, the way she remembered your name when no one else bothered. The evenings in the warm kitchen. All of it folded carefully and placed where it cannot be touched by the parts of the day that require you to function. You close the door. You keep working. The senator comes 3 months later. His name is Quintus Servilius Augurinus, and he arrives on a matter of trade dispute. Some disagreement about a shipment of grain from Ostia in which Macro's records and the senator's agent's records have produced 2 different numbers. Macro receives him in the atrium. You are summoned because the records are yours. The delivery manifest from Ostia confirms the count, you say. Your voice comes out level. 40 amphorae were recorded as damaged before loading and removed from the shipment at the point of origin. The senator's agent would have received a secondary document noting the reduction. If that document was not passed forward, the discrepancy is in the communication chain, not in the count itself. The senator looks at you the way men of his position look at objects that have unexpectedly produced noise. The room does not move. Then the senator says, "To Macro, not to you. The document was likely misfiled by my agent." Macro nods once. The meeting resolves. Afterward, in the corridor, Macro pauses beside you without stopping and says, very quietly, "Well done." Then he continues walking. Your hands are shaking slightly. You hadn't noticed until now. You press them flat against your thighs and breathe until they stop. Demetrius begins declining in your 16th year. It is gradual at first. He misplaces documents he would previously have located without thinking. He loses the thread of complex calculations mid-process. His handwriting develops a slight tremor that he ignores with the determined dignity of someone who has decided not to acknowledge what he cannot stop. You cover for him without discussion. Not out of pity. He would find pity insulting. Out of something more like loyalty and something more like debt. One morning you arrive to find him already at the desk, sitting very still, both hands flat on the surface, staring at nothing. You sit down across from him. You wait. After a long moment, he says, "The accounts for the Carthage shipment need to be reconciled before Friday. I'll have them done by Thursday, you say." He nods. He doesn't move. You begin working. He sits with you for an hour without speaking, and you understand without either of you saying so that what he needs right now is not help with the accounts. What he needs is to sit in a room where the work is still happening, where the knowledge he spent a lifetime accumulating is still present and still useful, even if it now lives inside someone else. You give him that. It is the most important thing you have ever given anyone. The accusation comes from Castor, which is not a surprise. What surprises you is the timing. 3 months after Demetrius is moved to lighter duties, when you have fully assumed responsibility for the accounts and your position in the household is more secure than it has ever been. You would have expected the attack earlier, when you were more vulnerable. Instead, it comes now, when you are stronger, which tells you that Castor has been waiting for the moment when it would matter most. The accusation is that you have been diverting small amounts from the household accounts into a personal arrangement with one of Macro's trade suppliers. It is precise enough to be plausible. It is false. You stand in Macro's office and present the full account records, every transaction, every cross-reference, every supplier correspondence. And you do it without anger and without fear, because anger would look like guilt, and fear would look like guilt, and the only thing that saves you here is clarity. It takes 2 hours. At the end of it, Macro sits quietly for a long moment looking at the records. Then he says, "I know." 2 words. No apology. No explanation of what happens next. What happens next is that Castor is reassigned to the outer estate 3 days later. You are not told this directly. You simply notice his absence. In this household, in this city, in this life, that is how justice works. Quietly, without ceremony, leaving you to figure out what it means on your own. The transfer comes 6 months later. Macro's trade business has expanded into a partnership with a senator's household across the city, and the senator requires someone to manage the combined accounts for a series of shipping contracts. Macro sends you, not permanently, an arrangement, he says, 3 months, perhaps 6. You pack everything you own into a single cloth bag. It is not a large bag. You have been in this household for 9 years, and the bag is still not large. Demetrius finds you in the corridor before you leave. He doesn't say anything for a moment. Then he puts one ink-stained hand briefly on your shoulder, a gesture so uncharacteristic that you understand immediately it is not a casual thing. He is saying something he doesn't have words for, or has words for but will not speak, which in the end amounts to the same. You nod. He goes back to his room. You walk out the gate. The document arrives in your 19th year, 2 weeks after Demetrius dies. You learn of his death through the household messenger. A brief note, factual, the kind of message that has learned to drain itself of emotion because emotion takes longer to read. Demetrius of the household of Gaius Aurelius Macro died in the night. Peaceful, the messenger says, then looks uncertain, as though he's not sure peaceful is a word he has authorization to use. You sit with it for a day, then the document comes. It is a manumission certificate, formal, stamped, witnessed, granting your freedom in Macro's name, citing years of faithful service and exceptional management of household accounts. The language is formal and commercial and completely impersonal, the language of a transaction rather than a gift. You read it 3 times. You are looking for something human inside it and not finding it, and then you realize that Demetrius wrote the accompanying letter, a separate, smaller document folded inside the first, and that the letter is different entirely. It is short. It says, "You learned everything I could teach you, and several things I could not. The accounts are in better hands. That will have to be enough." It is enough. It is more than enough. Freedom feels smaller than you imagined. For years it existed in your mind as a distant horizon, something bright enough to carry you through long days and longer nights. Then it arrives, and the next morning, the sun rises exactly the same way. The streets are still crowded. Merchants still argue in the marketplace. Rome continues without noticing that one person has become free. You leave Macro's house 3 days later, not because anyone forces you to stay, because leaving turns out to be harder than expected. For 9 years, every hallway has been familiar, every doorway, every routine. At the gate, a servant opens the door and steps aside. No permission is required, no order is given, no one stops you. For a moment, you simply stand there, then you step through. The gate closes behind you. Just the sound of wood meeting wood, the first door you have ever walked through entirely by choice. You rent a small room near the river. Nothing about it is impressive. The roof leaks when it rains. The walls are thin. The bed is uncomfortable. You love it immediately. Because every object inside belongs to you. Every decision belongs to you. The silence belongs to you. Weeks pass, then months. You find work managing records for merchants who care more about competence than status. Some know your past, most don't. The city remains what it has always been, restless, ambitious, indifferent. Sometimes you pass the markets where people are evaluated like inventory. You still slow down. You still look. Children stand on platforms exactly as you once did. Traders inspect and assess. Buyers discuss arrangements. The scene hasn't changed, only your place within it. One afternoon, a young girl catches your eye. She is frightened, trying not to show it, trying and failing. For a second, you see yourself. The child from the village, the child searching crowds for her parents, the child who thought someone would come. You keep walking. There is nothing you can do. The realization hurts. Freedom changes your life. It does not change the world. Years later, when your hair begins to gray and your hands ache during winter, people occasionally ask how you became so skilled with numbers and contracts. You never tell the full story. Most wouldn't understand it anyway. How a village disappeared in a single morning, how a friend vanished between one meal and the next, How an old man spent years teaching a frightened girl to read. How an empire can take everything from a person and still leave something behind. Sometimes, late at night, you think about the road that brought you to Rome, the smoke, the marching columns, the platform. You remember the child who believed her life had ended. In some ways it had. The girl chasing a wooden hoop through a village road never made it to adulthood. Someone else did, someone forged by loss, endurance, and time.